Hi, everybody. JJ here, and thanks for joining us here on our social media channels, whether you're checking us out on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. It's fantastic to have you guys here on the stream. And for this stream, we're actually going to be diving into a really cool promotion that we're throwing in terms of actually some reduced pricing on some awesome motherboards, as well as some great CPUs from Intel. So this is actually going to be a combination of 11th gen series processors, along with our Z590 series of motherboards. We've got our Prime series on promo. We have our TUF Gaming series on promo and our ROG Strix series, as well as our limited edition Gundam edition motherboard. So 4 different motherboards, 4 different promos that are going to be going on. They're starting today, and they'll be running all the way actually until April 4th. There's going to actually be a different promotion period for different bundles, so you're definitely going to want to keep this in mind. And I'll definitely run through all the promotions so that you can keep everything in mind. Hey, Erica, thanks for joining us here on the stream. And Bianca, also thanks for joining us here on the stream. Jeremy, also fantastic to have you here on the stream. So thanks so much. In terms of actually these promotions, there are some pretty nice savings. You're going to be looking somewhere between about $80 to as much as about $95 in terms of MSRP pricing reduction for this promo package. So essentially, if you're combining the 11th gen Core i7 series CPU with the ASUS series motherboard, you're going to get that really nice promo package savings. So let me go ahead and actually just share with you right off the bat the very first promotion that we have going on before we get ready to actually talk about kind of the chipset, the platform, going over the motherboards, and kind of the features and functions and things along those lines. So while definitely I know some of you might be wondering about, hey, why kind of be focusing on Z590 and 11th gen as opposed to, let's say, the latest generation like 12th generation and Z690? They're both outstanding platforms. And the reality is that if you're talking about building a system, you can definitely save quite a bit by taking advantage of some of these promo deals and pairing together an 11th gen series CPU like the 11700K or KF along with one of these Z590 series motherboards and be able to have some really outstanding gaming performance, whether you're talking about high refresh rate gaming at 1080p or 1440p or even 4K. Add to that too, definitely if you're looking for maybe a system that's going to be focused towards productivity or content creation, you're also going to have a very strong foundation. And the good mix of boards that we have here are going to kind of really lean themselves towards any type of kind of build configuration, whether you want to have something that's a little bit more towards maybe productivity and content creation, or maybe on that gaming side of the fence. So let me go ahead and share the very first promo that's active right now, just because I don't want you to guys miss out on the opportunity and being able to pick it up. So let me go ahead and bring up those promotions first here. And I should have the Prime here. Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and share this with you guys right off the bat, including the link. And keep in mind, again, the promotions are going to be running at different periods of times. So this first promo is going to be for the Prime Z590-A with the Core i7 11700KF, and it's going to be active as of today as well as tomorrow. After tomorrow, it will switch over into the next promotion, which will be for the TUF Gaming model. We'll then have the ROG Strix model, and then lastly, we'll have the Gundam Edition model. And each one will have a little bit of a different, like I said, promotion period, but on average, all of them are going to be at least about an $80 savings plus, and some of them might be closer to almost $100 savings when you pair the motherboard and the CPU together. So let me go ahead and drop this in the chat here. This is going to be the first promotion link for the Prime Z590-A and the Core i7 11700KF. Okay. And let me go ahead and just show you the screen so you guys can actually check it out the way the promotion will actually look in terms of if you were actually to go check it out. You'll see that you have a link. You'll see that once you click on the link, you do have the CPU and the motherboard already designated as a promotion. And you can see right there, there's the savings of $85. You don't have to make any adjustments. These are instant rebates. So literally just click add to cart and you're good to go. And you automatically get these savings. All right. So this is going to be pretty much similar for all of the motherboards within the lineup. So we'll have a promotion package on this setup as well here. This will be for the Z590 plus Wi-Fi gaming from our TUF series. So this will be kind of a little bit actually, in some of the features and specifications, positioned a little bit below the Prime series motherboard, and we'll talk about actually some of the differences between the two boards, but still fantastic boards, got a great set of features and functions and specifications, and you don't have to worry about maximizing the performance. If you talk about overclocking capability, stability and reliability, and even rich connectivity, all of these boards are going to have you covered in that respect. This promotion will be going on a little bit later. Then we will then be shifting into another promotion here for the ROG Strix Z590-E gaming. This one will also be with an 11700K. This will probably pretty much be the kind of the highest end bundle if you're kind of looking for a board that really has a lot of kind of top end specifications, features, and functions. And then lastly, we'll also have a promotion on the Gundam. Now you notice that they don't yet have the bundled pricing in effect because they are not yet live. So let me go ahead and run through the quick promotion periods just so that you're aware of those. So first up, as you can see, we've got that Prime Z590-A with the 11700KF, which will be for today and tomorrow. Then next up, we will have the TUF Gaming, which will be running from the 26th to the 27th. Then after that, we will have the ROG Strix Z590-E Gaming with the 11700K, and that will be running, sorry, let me actually go ahead and double check on the date for that one. I think that one shifts at a little bit of a different period. So that is going to be from April 2nd, only April 2nd. So I will go ahead and note that right there. So in a moment. And then we will have the Gundam edition, which will be on April 4th. Okay. So depending on kind of which model you're looking at, you're going to have different promotion periods. So do keep that in mind. And if you guys have any questions regarding any one of the boards, feel free to go ahead and ask. But I'm going to pretty much dive into kind of helping you to understand the features, functions, specifications of the chipsets, where the boards kind of differ and things along those lines. So hopefully any questions you might have in mind, we'll go ahead and make sure that those are answered. Hey, Brian, thanks for joining us on the stream. Fantastic to know that you're also enjoying your ROG Strix Z690 Apex board. Thanks so much. So let me go ahead and first get into it here and just kind of talk a little bit about some of kind of the, I guess, generalized benefits for some of you that might be maybe kind of on an older platform and maybe looking to upgrade to, let's say, a more modern platform. So although there is, of course, the newest chipset with Z690 and 12th gen, Z590 still really brings along a lot of current modern specifications, features, and functions. And when you talk about kind of the benefits, a lot of those are first and foremost afforded by the CPU. So with the introduction of the Rocket Lake-based architecture and 11th gen series CPUs, you're going to be actually getting some really nice benefits. So let's go ahead and actually bring up a little bit of a block right here, and we'll be able to kind of touch on a few of these items that you're going to be getting here. So when we take a look as a whole here, you'll see some nice elements. It's a little bit easier here for you guys to see. You'll see some elements in terms of what the CPU provides. So you're going to, of course, have DDR4 support. For DDR support, the memory controller actually on Rocket Lake is really impressive. So the baseline frequency is going to be 3200 megahertz, but you can easily run much, much faster frequencies. So if you want to buy, a nice kit of 3600, you can do that. If you want to buy a nice kit of 4000, you can do that. Even if you want to buy a nice kit of like 4400 or even higher, the IMC, so what's called the memory controller, which is built inside the CPU, is very robust within Rocket Lake. And what we see is actually the broad majority of the CPUs can actually comfortably run at much higher, what are called memory dividers. So if you're looking to run actually higher memory speeds, that's definitely an option. Now, once you kind of break after about, I'd say the 4400 marker to about 4800 marker, you'll start to begin seeing what's called a trail off. So there'll be essentially a smaller set of CPUs that'll be able to run at higher and higher frequencies. That being noted, we have actually tested CPUs that have such a strong IMC that even for like really high memory kits like this is a Kingston DDR4 5300 megahertz kit of memory, can actually run in a pure XMP configuration. Now, that's not going to be most of your CPUs, but the fact that actually this is possible in a pure XMP configuration is quite impressive. So DDR4 is going to be really great, not only at the baseline, but also through the overclocking support afforded by the memory controller and by support for XMP. A big update here, also compared to kind of older platforms, is going to be the PCI Express Gen 4 support. So you get 20 lanes of PCI Express Gen 4. Now, the nice thing here with going over to 20 lanes is that if I quickly kind of pull back on this and I go to a motherboard, when you talk about the PCI lanes are essentially what provide the links to different types of devices, namely something like your graphics card or even something like your M.2 based SSDs. And one of the nice things that Rocket Lake has introduced is that by going to 20 lanes, it means that you can have dedicated lanes for PCI Gen 4 for your M.2 SSD, install that, and still have full by 16 PCIe lanes for your graphics card. Now, that's not super critical. The reality is that even if you're running your PCIe slot at by 8, whether it's actually even PCI Gen 3 or PCI Gen 4, you're still going to essentially almost get the maximum performance. But it's really awesome that in the Z590 platform, with the upgrade to the 20 lanes, you're going to have that flexibility of being able to essentially have that PCI Gen 4 M.2 SSD installed and pretty much not have it affect your by 16 graphics. So that's a very, very nice update that we have, especially if you're talking about an older platform. Now, depending on how old your platform might be, some other nice benefits, of course, is just going to be the support for PCIe NVMe, SSD in general. In addition to that, you also, of course, have integrated Intel Xe graphics. So this is their newer graphics architecture. Now, while this isn't going to replace, of course, the kind of performance that you would have if you were to go with like a very high performance discrete graphics card, which of course is fully supported on any one of these motherboards, you're still going to be able to have a really, really nice experience when it comes to taking advantage of that iGPU. And that iGPU also provides benefits like what is called fixed function acceleration, which can be beneficial in different types of content creation applications, also for media decoding, quick sync technologies. There's a lot of really cool benefits there. But do keep in mind that on the bundles, as you'll see, there's going to be bundles that include the K and the KF. The KF CPU will not have integrated graphics, while the K series CPU does have integrated graphics. So that is an important difference. And in a moment, guys, I'll double check to see if we got any questions here in the comments, just to make sure that we're keeping you up to speed and you're aware of everything. Now, beyond that, DDR4 support, the PCI Gen 4 support, that 11th gen architecture, of course, with the new improvements in IPC, which means just clock for clock, being able to offer better performance and high clock speeds with technologies like Intel Turbo Boost 3.0, you're going to have very, very impressive performance. The reality is that you can really, if you kind of even measure this to kind of other CPU platforms like a Ryzen Zen 3 series platform, you're going to be able to actually generally get better performance from a gaming perspective across a wide range of games with something similar if you were to compare this to like a 5800X. So very, very strong performance, even though you even have faster performance with the 12th gen series. If you're talking about building a system where you're trying to save a little bit of money, right, but still have outstanding gaming performance at 1080p, at high refresh rates, at 1440p, you can see really, really great gaming performance. And you can feel confident that regardless of whatever GPU you're going to be pairing, you're not going to be limiting anything. And then on top of that, of course, this being a K-series CPU, you have overclocking support. And we'll talk a little bit later in terms of kind of what are some of the overclocking options that will offer you to kind of make that even an easier experience for you, because we have some really cool features and functionality when it's overclocking support. So again, a kind of recap, very strong performance, extensive overclocking options, that integrated graphics technology with QuickSync, along with that advanced media engine. But keep in mind, that's going to be for the K-series CPU. The KF series CPU does not have integrated graphics. That Intel Turbo Boost 3.0 technology. We talked about the DDR4 memory support and the memory controller. And then, of course, that PCI Gen 4 support for PCIe and M.2 based SSDs. Now, one other thing that we want to talk about is now moving into the chipset. So the chipset itself is where you have a lot of your other connections on the motherboard. And so that's going to be things like helping to support 2.5 gigabit LAN, along with USB 3.Gen 2 2x2, that means 20 gigabits. So very high speed USB connectivity, along with 10 gigabits connectivity, optionally Thunderbolt support, as well as specifically in this pairing, Z590 with an 11th gen series CPU gets you this what's called 8x DMI 3.0 link. That essentially just means that there's more bandwidth between the chipset and the CPU to be able to benefit for things like multiple SSDs, if you want to run RAID configurations, or being able to run kind of multiple controllers at one time and be able to maintain a high level of performance. So all the way around, really kind of all the key specs that you could want in terms of a modern platform are really kind of present on here. This does also support the latest generation of what's called resizable bar, which is a very cool graphics technology, which has now been implemented for both NVIDIA and AMD-based graphics cards, which in some games can offer you additional performance benefits. So you pretty much get kind of all that key tech all baked into this latest generation chipset and CPU. So let's go ahead and quickly see if we got any questions here before we get ready to actually talk about our first bundled pairing, which is going to be that Prime and 11700 series CPU. And then we'll move into the TUF Gaming series, and then lastly, the ROG Strix series. For the Gundam model, we'll kind of combine it together with the TUF Gaming model because they're pretty much the same exact motherboard, except that they feature a different design. Okay. Hey, David, thanks for joining us here on the stream. Hey, sir. Yes, we're definitely going to actually be going over AI overclocking, AI cooling, and the AI noise canceling technology, as those are actually features that you're going to find on these motherboards. So definitely, if that's something that you're interested in, rest assured, we're definitely going to be going over those features and functions. So we're going to have you covered. Hey, Richard, happy to have you here on the stream. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, so let's go ahead and get ready to get into our first pairing right here. And again, that is going to be for the Prime Z590-A 11700KF. And I'm going to again go ahead and link that guy in the chat for you guys. And again, this is active right now until tomorrow with a bundled savings of about $85, which is a very nice deal in terms of the overall kind of savings that you're going to be getting out of it. Hey, Bianca, if I put an M.2 on the first slot underneath the processor, and I also put something in the DIMM.2, will it remain 16 lanes? It actually depends on your motherboard, Bianca. I can't tell you without knowing your motherboard, but check your manual information. Generally, on most of the boards, the DIMM.2 is going to be wired to the chipset. So that means this right here, not the CPU. So that means the DIMM.2 would not be affected. So essentially, you could put your M.2 SSDs on the DIMM.2 add-in card on something, let's say like an extreme board, and it wouldn't matter because it's not going to pull any lanes from the CPU. Okay, so generally, yes, you would be able to maintain by 16, but double check your manual. It will tell you whether or not the DIMM.2 is linked to the chipset or if it's linked to the CPU. All right, so first up here, let's go ahead and bring up our Prime Series motherboard. And I've got it right here. Okay. So this is going to be the first board that we want to go ahead and jump into and give you guys a little bit of a closer look at. I've got it right here on the table. This is our Prime Z590-A. This is going to be a great board for pretty much any type of user out there. So whether you're a content creator, whether you're a gamer, whether you're into kind of productivity, science, and simulation, it's got a really cool design aesthetic. As you see, it's got this nice kind of clean, kind of black PCB, but it's got white accents on it there, and then white and silver throughout. Gives it a really kind of polished and really nice looking aesthetic. Both our black boards and our white boards have a very clean overall design aesthetic, but this one offers just a little bit more kind of a bold aesthetic, just because white tends to offer a little bit of a brighter feel, and it's a little bit more reflective in terms of the lighting, right? Where black has a really kind of cool, clean, premium look to it, but will actually absorb a little bit of kind of color. So it has a little bit of a different vibe and feel when you go ahead and install it in your system. So in terms of kind of the core specifications, we're going to put this board actually underneath our secondary cam here in a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and just zoom in and kind of take a look at some of the key specifications. So you've got very high quality power componentry on here, so you can ensure stable and reliable operation. All of the motherboards that we're going to be talking about are using high performing power stages. Those are essentially the power components that are underneath here, or what people call the VRM. So whether you're going to run this stock or overclock, you don't have to worry about it. It's going to be stable and reliable, and you can comfortably feel confident that even if you want to overclock the CPU, the board is not going to be a limiting factor. You've got large, robust VRM heatsinks right here. We've got our ProCool power connectors. These actual power connectors, they're thicker than traditional connectors, so they actually support a higher level of amperage. That's allowing them better efficiency and lower temperatures. We have a lot of fan headers on the board. There's actually a total of 5 default fan headers on this motherboard specifically. So you're going to have 2 for the CPU and the CPU OPT, and then 3 chassis fan headers, and then also an AIO pump header. So if you want to connect your AIO to the motherboard and have the pump be powered, you can do that. And this board also does have a water pump header. So if you want to go ahead and maybe get into water cooling and you've got something like a water pump, you can connect the water pump directly to the motherboard and have it be powered by the motherboard. So that is also going to be one of the items that you do have on this board. So from there, of course, we have the standard socket of 4 DIMM slots right there. You can see right here, we've got 2 of our RGB headers. In total, this board is going to have 4 RGB headers, 3 ARGB headers, and then 1 legacy 5-volt ARGB header. Here's your 4 LEDs for diagnostics. So when you're kind of putting together your system, if you run into an issue, you'll have a little LED right here. It says for the CPU, for the DRAM, for the graphics card, or for the boot device. That can help you sometimes with troubleshooting issues if you run into a problem. You've got an internal USB-C header, which is now going to be found on a lot of the chassis. Another USB 3 header, a power button, 6 SATA ports right here. In terms of M.2 SSDs, you have one M.2 SSD, a secondary M.2 SSD, and 3. So 3 M.2 SSDs can be installed on this motherboard, with this one being PCIe Gen 4 support. When we move down here to the bottom, more additional fan headers, including that water pump header and an optional what's called temp sensor header, USB 2 headers, and a Thunderbolt header. So this is pretty cool. I'll show you in a little bit here. Actually, let me see if I can show you guys. But we have an optional Thunderbolt 4 add-in card. So all of the motherboards that we're going to show today do have the ability to support Thunderbolt 4. You can add it in through this Thunderbolt 4 add-in card. So if you're looking to have ultra high speed Thunderbolt connectivity, you can add this to the motherboard. Okay. And then as we move down here, you'll see those other two RGB headers that are on the motherboard are isolated audio design, and that kind of wraps out all of the onboard connections. When we look here to the rear, you're going to have a lot of I/O. So you've got HDMI and DP, but keep in mind, this will not be functional if the CPU that's paired with it is the KF as opposed to the K. USB right here, 10 gigabit USB-C, 20 gigabit USB-C, 10 gigabit USB 3, 10 gigabit USB 3, and USB 3, and then 2.5 gig LAN, and then multi-channel audio. Plus, you've got that nice integrated I/O shield, which makes installation in your systems really, really easy. This board does also support our Hyper M.2 expansion card. So if you even want to add more M.2 SSDs, our Hyper M.2 expansion card can support up to 4 additional M.2 SSDs that you can install on this card and then install it into a slot. So if you even want to have more M.2 SSDs, you could definitely go that route. And again, remember, it does also support Thunderbolt 4. So let's get ready to actually show you one of the cool features that we've got on here. And then we're actually going to be talking a little bit about that AI technologies that we had a question about. So again, right now, this board is on promotion currently, and it is, let me go ahead and just bring that again one more time. It is right now with this $85 savings when you pair it together with that 11700 KF. So this is really great promotional pricing right now. So I'm going to go ahead and get this board thrown underneath our secondary camera so that you can actually see a very cool feature that we introduced on the Z590 series of motherboards, which was something that we called our M.2 Q-Latch design. So let me go ahead and just make a little bit of an adjustment here, and I'll show you what this looks like. Okay, so let me go ahead and show this. Yeah, and definitely if you guys actually do some kind of comparative pricing, what you'll actually find is that the savings, these promos that we're right now running for these boards, I think are really strong promotions. And even if you compare this to, like I'd say similarly, like a 12th Gen Z590 combination, it's quite a bit of a saving. So like the TUF Gaming model, which will have about a similar promo discount, would be for the 12th gen 12700K, and then the same C690 series motherboard, and this is the DDR4 version, not the DDR5 version, that would be 673. So when you compare that to you know, the current promotion that you're seeing right here with, let's say, something like 491, it's a pretty actually sizable savings. And so you can definitely see that there's some strong values. And like I said, from a performance perspective right now, you're definitely not going to be shorting yourself in terms of 1080p and 1440p high refresh rate gaming, or even for kind of general productivity and performance. So really, really great experience that you're going to get here. So let me go ahead and show you guys here this kind of cool little functionality that we've got. So if we switch right over here, you can see that I've got my motherboard, right? This is the prime board. And right here would be where you would install your M.2 SSDs, right? So traditionally, for most of you that know that when you install your drives, you've got to, of course, remove the heatsink. Now, not every single motherboard will have a heatsink, but the cool thing is all of these motherboards will at least have one heatsink, and multiple of them will have multiple heatsinks. You can see here the prime has 2 M.2 heatsinks, right? But it has 3 slots, right? So once you remove that, one thing that you'll notice that we did is that we made the actual screws. We made these captive, so that means that the screws won't fall off, which is nice. So they're attached to the actual heatsink. You can see there's the pad for the heatsink, right? And then right here, you'll actually see this is where you would install your M.2 SSD. So if I take here, I can see I've got my M.2 SSD. And the cool thing is that when I angle it in there, Let me go ahead and see if I can see that. You'll see that there's kind of this little latching mechanism right there. So all you need to do is just turn that, and now your M.2 SSD is installed. It's locked in place. So it's a really simple tool-free way of being able to actually install your M.2 SSD. This is something that ASUS pioneered and invented for kind of enthusiasts in general mainstream series motherboards. You saw this in some kind of server and kind of professional workstation environments, but it wasn't something that was in standard desktop-based motherboards. So we were really happy to introduce this on the standard kind of consumer enthusiast oriented motherboards. So really, really simple. So again, I'll show you again how that works. You'll just adjust that little lever, pops out the drive, and then from there, and then just lock the drive into place, and that's it. So that's a really cool feature. The boards that I'll show you, all of the boards I will show you will feature this Q-Latch technology. So a really simple and easy way to be able to go ahead and install this type of M.2 SSD on your motherboard. Hey, Richard. Yeah, thanks for your feedback there. I definitely agree. It's definitely a really nice, easy way to go about the installation. Hey, Hyper, is that I have an 11700K. Is there any reason to upgrade to the Core i7 in this bundle? It depends. I mean, the 11600Ks are really a very, very good CPU in terms of kind of the. Let me go ahead and switch that out. Go there, guys. Okay, so in terms of the overall kind of performance, 11600K is already really, really good. The main benefit, of course, by going over to the i7 is just going to be more cores. So if you could benefit from the cores, there's some value, but these are hard bundles, so that means it's the motherboard and the CPU. I would say in your situation, if you're looking for a little bit more performance, probably take advantage of overclocking, because the 11600K is a very, very good part to be able to overclock. It's not really that difficult in terms of managing heat from that type of CPU, so you can definitely nicely bump up the performance. Also, is the motherboard any better than the TUF 590? Well, we're actually going to be talking about the 590 in a little bit, but there are some key benefits that the Prime 590 does offer. And probably the biggest benefit is going to be that it has our ASUS AI technologies. So it has AIOC and AI cooling, which the TUF Gaming motherboard doesn't have. So essentially, you're going to have to manually kind of tune certain parameters as opposed to being able to take advantage of our ASUS AIOC technology or AI cooling technology. And I'm going to talk about those in a little bit. So let's go ahead and just keep showing you a couple of the other kind of cool little design elements that we have here on the Prime board. So again, here, that's that Q-Latch design. And again, here, remember that the screws are going to be captive, so you don't have to worry about the screws. From there, you would just remove the thermal pad material, put that back on there, and you would be good to go. You would have your M.2 SSD installed, and you'd be set, and you would be good to go. Down here, you'll see a little bit of a closer shot of the isolated audio design that we have on the motherboard. So this is going to be the Crystal Sound 3.0 that we have. This is also going to be another upgrade on the Prime series, where it has the S1220 A audio codec, where the TUF Gaming is going to have the S1200 audio codec. And I'll actually show you here, guys, a quick slide that will show you some of the immediate differences from a specification standpoint before we get into some of the other items. So let me actually go ahead and see if I can bring up that slide here while I put my M.2 SSD back in place. So give me 1 second here to make that adjustment. And I think I've got it right here. Okay, so here's a cool little table that I've got prepped for anybody kind of wondering about that as we go through these bundles, which, remember, the different bundles will be coming into different dates. Today, the Prime is going to be on the 24th and the 25th. The next bundle will be for the TUF Gaming boards, which will be on the 26th and then the 27th. And then the ROG Strix board, which will be on the 2nd. And then lastly, the Gundam board, which will be on the 4th. Okay, so do keep that in mind. The promo pricing on all of them is generally going to be about approximately in that $85-ish range for more MSRP pricing. So if you were to take a look at the current bundle links, you would remove that pricing, and that would be about your kind of your savings. Okay, so if we take a look right here, you'll see that the Prime, and then here's the Plus, right? So all of them support DDR4. They all support high frequency. Technically, the TUF Gaming is certified for slightly less, 5133, but I can tell you, you could run 5133 on this, on this board. Generally, it's going to be more a limitation of the memory controller, the CPU. The power stages are all going to be pretty similar, although the ROG Strix board does have the highest performing power stages, and it does have a more advanced heatsink, but they're all high performing 14+2 power stage VRMs. In terms of overclocking, they all support overclocking. So every single one of them, you can do it through the UEFI. You can use Intel XTU, but only the Prime-A and the ROG Strix Z690, Z590-E will support our ASUS AIOC technology. And I'll actually show you what the ASUS AIOC technology works and how it benefits you. It's essentially using advanced machine learning, and it will track your systems, specifically your system and your cooler's performance, and then match your overclock based on that system cooling performance. So if you had something from, let's say, like a tower heatsink, so here you can see I've got like a tower heatsink versus, let's say, something like this ROG Gen 360. Those are different coolers. They have different cooling performance, and that would mean different types of overclocking kind of headroom. The AIOC will automatically adapt for that, allowing you to have kind of best overclocking experience based on the cooling performance. They all support PCIe Gen 4 for the graphics and for the M.2. They all have onboard graphics output, but depending on the CPU configuration, then you may not necessarily have graphics output support. As you can see right here for the Prime, that one is bundled with the KF, so it won't have integrated graphics out. They all support Thunderbolt through that Thunderbolt add-in card. The TUF Gaming has 2 less ports, 4 versus 6. They have a pretty similar M.2. Actually, this is an error on my part. Sorry, it's not 4 M.2. The Prime is 3, and the TUF Gaming is 3, and the ROG Strix is 4. So correction, this is 3, 3, and 4. So the ROG Strix has 1 more M.2 SSD support, so a total of 4. The TUF Gaming board has Wi-Fi 6. The Prime does not have Wi-Fi. And then the ROG Strix board will have Wi-Fi 6E. They all have 2.5 gigabit networking, with the Strix having dual 2.5 gig networking. They all have USB 3.Gen 2 by 2 on the back Type-C, so that's 20 gigabits. USB is also where they differ a bit. You can see here the TUF Gaming will have a total of 7 USB ports versus the Prime, which has 9, and then the ROG Strix has a total of 10. But it's not just the number of ports. There's also a difference in the number of high-speed ports. So the Dash-E has 8 USB 3 ports, right? So the Prime has 5, and then the TUF Gaming has 5, okay? They all have the internal Type-C header, but the ROG Strix board has also a by 2, so a 20 gigabits internal Type-C header. And then fan headers are going to be pretty similar. TUF Gaming has 5 with an AIO pump header. The Prime has 5 with AIO and a VRM assist header and a water pump header. And then the ROG Strix has all of those plus a Hydro Node header. And I'll talk a little bit later on what the Hydro Node header is specifically. The audio design is where there's a bit of also difference. TUF Gaming is the S1200A. The Prime is going to be the S1220, which is a slight upgrade. They both have DTS audio packages, and I'll show you what the audio package looks like. And then the ROG Strix will have the highest in audio design with the 4080 audio codec plus a Savitech amp and Sonic Studio 3. And the RGB headers are also slightly different. The TUF Gaming has 4, but it's 2 ARGB and 2 standard RGB. And then the Prime and the ROG Strix both have 3 ARGB and 1 standard RGB. Now, do keep in mind that for the RGB, you can use something like, I have one over here. I thought I had my splitter over here, but this is kind of like a PWM fan splitter cable. You can use these, of course, on any one of the boards, but you can also get RGB splitters. So you could put these on one of the actual headers, and then from there have that one header, and then you could, output to 3, 4, 5 ARGB. So you can run multiple ARGB devices from one single header. The main limitation of that is just going to be that whatever you connect to that one header is going to be synced. So If you had like 5 fans, you couldn't uniquely set a pattern to those 5 fans. All those fans would run the same essentially control signal because they're being split from one header. But for me, I generally find in most builds that generally works for a lot of people. They generally don't want individual control per every single RGB device, but that depends on your preference. But if you just wanted more headers, take for instance, you've got a build where you're going to have like 9 RGB devices connected, then that's something you can easily do by just taking advantage of a splitter cable. So let me get back here to finishing up some things on the prime board, but I'm going to go ahead and just double check and see if we got any questions that have come up there quickly. Let's see right here. Yeah, I would definitely agree. The Maximus Z590 here plus the 11700K is a pretty good combo. The Maximus isn't going to be on these promotions. Right now, we only have the Prime, the TUF Gaming, and the ROG Strix -E, but the ROG Strix -E is very close to the Maximus Hero, but the Maximus Hero definitely is another class, right? Our Maximus class of boards are always our flagship series. Okay. All right. So again, we've got here the prime board, and we've kind of gone over kind of all the core specifications right there. So now I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about those AI-centric technologies so that you kind of have a little bit of a sense of what does that really kind of do. So let me go ahead and bring up our product page here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and tune this over here. And here you'll see that we do have this listed on the product page. And so I can also go ahead and link this for you guys if you guys want to check this out. Hey, Shub, no 12th gen promos. These promotions are all right now. Of course, we've got an awesome range of 12th gen series products, in terms of DDR4 and DDR5, but these promotions right now are kind of like I'd say a big kind of closeout benefit that we're trying to push for 11th gen and for Z590. There's some pretty significant savings, even if you compare to the Z690 and DDR4. So these are definitely some very price aggressive promotions where, like I said, you could be saving a few $100s if you compare that to a comparable kind of Z690 DDR4 based offering when you take the CPU. So like a 12700K and then like our TUF Gaming Z690 D4 board, it's going to be quite a bit more expensive than, let's say, the 11700K and then your TUF Gaming Z590 DDR4 based motherboard, right? So again, to recap, I believe I've shared all the links there in the chat, but the promotions that we're running right now, again, is for the Z590-A 11700KF, and that's going to be for today and tomorrow. The TUF Gaming Z590 Plus with the 11700KF, and that's on the 26th and the 27th. The ROG Strix Z690-E and the 11700K on the 2nd, and then the Z590 Wi-Fi Gundam Edition, and that is going to be on the 4th. Okay. All right. So if we head back over here, you can see our fiber optimization. The key element that we're going to be talking about here is our ASUS AI overclocking. So this has actually been in development for years. We've had multiple iterations of it. It was actually first designed and developed on the X299 platform, and we've kind of kept refining it and implementing it and improving upon it. So how does it work? Well, it's based in what's called the UEFI BIOS and firmware. So you just go into the UEFI, although you can now enable it through our Armory Crate software. And it's a very simple process. Once you actually enable it, there's actually a hardware controller that's built onto the motherboard. And what it does is it tracks the actual system's cooling performance. So whether you have a 240 millimeter AIO cooler or you have a 360 millimeter AI cooler, it doesn't matter. As that information is tracked, it builds a cooling score. And we take that information and then we compare that against our own internal database that we've compiled. So we've actually tested hundreds of CPU samples with all kinds of permutations with different types of coolers and the voltage that it requires to increase the CPU frequency. So if I bring up the 11700K, let's go ahead and bring up the metrics for this, right? Let me go ahead and show you what this looks like, guys. So let's bring up the 11700K. And we're going to look at its kind of key operating metrics, right? So this is the official specification. So you'll see right here that the max turbo frequency, right? You have the 5 gigahertz, right? Now keep in mind that the frequency is going to be based on the number of cores. So this is not 5 gigahertz across all cores, right? That means it's going to be the highest frequency that you would see on essentially a certain number of cores. So what ASUS AIOC does is there's a really couple of actually really cool things that we do in terms of the way that the overclocking technology works. One is that we do a per core overclock, which means that we will actually increase the overclock per different cores. So on a lower number of cores, you're going to have a higher frequency, and on a higher number of cores, we'll have a slightly lower frequency. This helps to maximize the overclocking headroom and also is beneficial for, let's say, gaming and general applications versus just multi-threaded applications, right? We also, too, will use what's called an adaptive voltage. This is a very efficient and effective way to apply voltage because it means that when your CPU is under load, the voltage goes up. But when your CPU is idling and it's not doing a lot, the voltage comes down. This is very different than sometimes the way manual overclockers will do what's called a static voltage, which means they'll force voltage and the voltage will stay constant. It doesn't go up, it doesn't go down, it stays consistent. This is actually worse for your CPU, produces more heat, and it will produce higher power consumption. And adaptive voltage is what's ideal because it will dynamically go up and, like I said, then go down. Also, it will be voltage that's specific to each one of those cores. And we do this all automatically for you. So even if kind of half of the things I'm talking about you don't have a clear understanding on, you don't have to worry about them because ASUS AIC does it all automatically for you. And the other really cool part to this is that it will automatically take advantage of any changes, whether they're good or they're bad for your system's cooling performance. So right here, you can see I've got a big 360 millimeter AO. Maybe let's say the pump starts to weaken out, or maybe there's a lot of dust, debris, and dander in my fans, or maybe my ambient temperature in my room goes up from the winter to the summer, right? And it gets hotter. If we sense that the cooling performance starts to go down, we will actually automatically moderate the overclock. We'll bring the overclock down a little bit to be in line with your cooler's performance. So this is actually one of the really cool things about ASUS AIOC compared to traditional overclock. And this is a key benefit that you would have on the Prime motherboard and on the ROG Strix board, but it's not on the TUF Gaming motherboard. The TUF Gaming motherboard, you can still totally manually overclock it, but it doesn't have this feature. If you guys want, I can show you a quick demo of how it looks like in the UEFI if you actually really want to see the way that the interface looks like. But that is pretty much kind of a base explanation of the way that the ASUS AIOC technology works. And you'll see right here, it does show you like a little breakdown of the actual frequency improvement, the voltage, all the target information. It's all listed in there. And you can customize this if you want. So that is also kind of cool. If you want to set your own voltage cap or your own temperature cap, you can do that within the ASUS AIOC application. Okay. Let me see if we got any questions right there. Hey, Travis, I wouldn't be concerned with the SP prediction. It's just part of an internal assessment that we do when we actually are analyzing the CPU. It's not really that relevant. It has some relevancy in terms of the leakage identifiers relative to the CPU, but mostly really when we test actually CPUs, we have hundreds of CPU samples that are all within the same family, right? So, we'll have multiple, Core i7s, multiple Core i9s, multiple Core i5s, and they all get ratings, and they all have what are called different leakage markers. And so leakage just relates to essentially kind of the variance in terms of the way that voltage works within that. Some CPUs are going to be a little bit more leaky, some are going to be a little bit less leaky. There's also going to be some scenarios that you have to account for that the power delivery and the voltage application, along with what's called the load line calibration policies, will differ between one board and another board. We handle all of that logic internally. So the SP rating is really more for us in terms of taking our machine learning model and then applying it in terms of relation to the overclock. And it's not really that relevant for the user. A lot of users like to try to look at it and figure out, whether there's some kind of specialized formulaic value to it. But because it, like I said, it's conditionally tied into other metrics that we have that we're the ones that are aware of as part of the ASUS AIOC algorithm, it's not something you really need to kind of super be overtly concerned with. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Okay, so let me go ahead and see if we got any other. Hey, Evo, you do have a lot of control in terms of if you kind of want to go in and fine tune ASUS AIC after the fact. So if you'd rather make adjustments to it, I guess I can show you that in the UEFI. if you want to make that change, you can still go in after the fact and make modifications. So even after ASUS AIC has made all of its adjustments, if you want to go ahead and customize the VF curve, as it's called, you can customize the VF curve. That's the great thing about ASUS AIC, is that it can pretty much be a starting point for you to go and then further fine tune it with certain types of adjustments. Or you can pretty much use it as is to be able to allow you an efficient and effective and kind of stable overclock. So the choice is up to you. Hey, David, sadly, no, we don't. The AMD architecture is entirely different, and the design and development of ASUS ISE has literally actually taken thousands of people hours in terms of its design and development over years. It's a massive undertaking to actually be able to develop this type of technology, and we are looking to try to hopefully be able to introduce similar versions of it for the AMD platform, but as of right now, no. We have made similar kind of really cool technologies for that respective platform, but this is really kind of one of the really big benefits of the kind of extensive partnership that we've had with Intel's performance and R&D team, along with our long-term experience working on Intel platforms, is being able to offer things like ASUS AIOC. So the other item that I wanted to talk about in terms of kind of another cool AI-related technology is going to be this one, which is what we call AI cooling. And so AI cooling, how does it work? Well, this also requires another special microcontroller on the motherboard. So a lot of people are aware that when it comes to kind of traditional fan controls on the motherboard, we've offered fan controls in the UEFI and in the operating system, where we do like fan calibration. So we can automatically check the minimum and the maximum speeds. You can set a fan curve. You can map it to different temperature sources, so that if you want to map, let's say, your fans to respond to your CPU, you can do that. But if you also wanted to have the actual fans respond to the GPU temperature, you can do that, right? Those are all really cool things that we already offer. But AI cooling is actually another kind of step to be able to provide a more streamlined experience to users. So the microcontroller, what it will do is actually on a hardware level is monitor the stability of your temperature that you have for your system, specifically for the CPU. If it notices the actual CPU is writing at a specific temperature target, it will automatically then reduce the actual fan curve and essentially the operating parameters for your primary fans and reduce it. It will track the temperature though in real time, so that it doesn't drop more than 5 degrees, but it will drop to a much lower essentially operating value. So this can have your fans that say maybe be from like 1000 RPM to like 600 RPM. So it will be much quieter and also afford you power savings. And this is all done on a hardware level. You don't have to make any tweaks, tuning, or adjustment or anything like that. It just purely works. The moment that it, of course, it notices that the fan policy comes back up, it will go ahead and kick the fans back into place. So it's essentially just there for users that don't kind of go through configuring their fans, and they don't kind of calibrate them, or they don't do anything to them. This is just a simpler way of getting more at being able to ensure your system kind of can be as quiet as possible, but also not sacrifice in terms of the cooling performance, because while it will bring the fans down, it will then automatically, like I said, ramp them back up. And the great thing is that AI cooling, for those that don't want to use any software, if you want to control all your fans within the UEFI, you can just enable AI cooling and still do all your fan tuning in the UEFI BIOS, and you don't have to use any software. So it is a great feature. So just like ASUS AI overclocking, both of these are on a hardware level and firmware level, and they don't require any software for you to actually utilize them. Okay. Correct. Yes. So the duty cycle. So the duty cycle, some people refer to kind of RPM or the duty cycle, sometimes output voltage. There's kind of different characteristics, all that go into influencing how your fan is working. But essentially what AI cooling will do is it will automatically bring down that duty cycle, or that, like I said, that RPM value, which is how most people, I think, kind of understand their fans, right? Their fan is maybe running like at 1000 RPM, and it'll bring it down to like 600 RPM. But we won't exceed a 5-degree delta. So that's what we kind of have dialed in, and that's all tracked, like I said, by the hardware controller that is on the motherboard. So that is another kind of cool feature that you have on the Prime Series motherboard, is that ASUS AI cooling. You also have that AI cooling and ASUS AIOC, right? Those are kind of some of the cool benefits, along with those other items that we talked about there in kind of the comparison chart. So those are the main things that I kind of wanted to be able to touch on for the Prime Series motherboard. So I think here, next up, we're going to get ready to actually go into our TUF Gaming motherboard. Like I said, this one is going to be a little bit of a step down. So it'll be a little bit of a lower cost bundle when this goes into effect. And again, The TUF Gaming bundle will be coming in on the 26th and the 27th, but still a fantastic board. Really, really great value in terms of kind of its overall features, functions, and specifications, with really, I'd say the main things that you're quote unquote missing out on are going to be a little bit more connectivity, like I said, from the USB side, and then of course that ASUS AIOC and that AI cooling technology. Okay, and for those that did ask for the kind of the demo in the ASUS AIOC, I will still show that at the end. So I will still show you guys in the UEFI actually how that works if you're kind of interested in that. Okay, so let me go ahead and bring up our TUF Gaming board here and show you guys what we got going on here. So give me a second here and I will load this up. Okay, and yep, here we go. Okay, and I can kind of show you again also, I guess, side by side if you guys wanted to see side by side. So here's the TUF Gaming board. And here is the Prime board. So they're both really nice looking boards, but you can see the TUF Gaming is pretty much going to be kind of a monochrome board, right? If you didn't even have the CPU socket cover, you'd pretty much see it's black and white, right? With some just light white accents. And the Prime is going to be that black with that white accents. So both great looking, really nice. And like I said, from a core features, function, and specification standpoint, you're still going to get really all those key benefits of the 11th gen platform, along with the Z590 based chipset. So let me go ahead and throw this one here on our secondary cam. And we're going to go ahead and take a closer look at this one. So this will be for the TUF Gaming, okay? And I will go ahead and share the link for this one, but keep in mind that the promotion pricing for this one, you won't see it active on Amazon until tomorrow, okay? Hey, Rusty, happy to have you here on the stream. Thanks so much for joining us. So let me go ahead and make sure that we share that link there for the TUF Gaming bundle. So this will be for the TUF Gaming bundle. And again, remember, all of the bundles are going to approximately be around like $85 off of the MSRP. So you're going to get a nice savings by these bundled pricing, okay, when you put these to kind of together right here. So again, for kind of comparison, if we just kind of show you again, here you'll see that if I look at the bundle link, it's not active right now. So you'll see that you don't have that kind of promotion pricing, where right now the TUF Gaming model is right now with that almost $85 savings at $491.13, right? So that one is already active right now. But again, the TUF Gaming won't be until tomorrow. Excuse me, day after tomorrow, the 26th. Okay, so let's go ahead and now take a closer look here at the board. So this is going to be the TUF Gaming Z590 plus Wi-Fi. We already kind of pretty much talked about all the key benefits of Z590, right, and 11th gen. So we just want to do a quick kind of recap of the core kind of layout. Again, very large, high performance VRM heatsinks, 14+2 power stage, no issues in terms of overclocking this 11700K series CPU. Got the ProCool power connectors, 4 DIMM slots. You can readily support high frequency DDR4, 4000, 4200, 4400, 4800. Not going to be an issue here. The main limiting factor would be your memory controller, which is going to vary, of course, from CPU to CPU. The RGB headers, so you've got 2 right here at the top. And then if we go down right here, you've got another one right here and another one right here. You then are also going to have your USB-C internal header and then your USB 3. Now, keep in mind, remember that the only one that has the 20 gigabit internal header is going to be the ROG Strix board that we'll take a look at a little bit. This one is going to be your standard. We then have 4, which remember also the Prime has 6 versus the 4 here. And then also there's no water pump header. But in terms of the standard fan headers, you have 5, right? So you have the CPU OPT, and chassis fan headers. And remember, you can also just use a PWM splitter cable there if you want to just be able to add more. Same thing like you can add a RGB splitter cable if you want to be able to have more. And this board also supports the Thunderbolt header down here, which is just like the Prime series motherboard. And this has the TUF Gaming isolated audio design, but this is the S1200A as opposed to the S1220A, which is just a little bit higher performing. This board does have 3 M.2 SSD slots, just like the Prime board, but it has actually heat sinks for all of the M.2. So one here and then two here. And this board does also have the Q-Latch design that we talked about. So it has that very nice and easy, simple way to be able to install your M.2 SSDs. And you have your integrated I/O shield to make installation very easy. 2 USB here, another 2 USB here, 20 gigabits on the rear, 10 gigabits with here, and then 2.5 gigabit LAN, and then Wi-Fi 6. So very, very nice level of connectivity offered on that board. Don't think we probably need to do too much of a close-up here, so I just want to actually touch on some of the cool kind of like TUF Gaming specific elements. So I know somebody asked about ASUS AI noise canceling, so let's go ahead and show you what that looks like here. Give me a second to open this up, and I will show you. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at it here. Okay, so this is going to be for the ASUS AI noise canceling feature. So all these boards will actually support this functionality. It just works through the ASUS Armory Crate software. You just have to install that and you're good to go. It's a pretty easy level of functionality to enable. As you can see right here, the way that it works is you just install the application, and once you actually install it, you'll actually have different options in terms of how much filtering you want to have. So you can have like a low, medium, or high, and this will work with any microphone. It could be an analog mic or a digital mic. So USB microphone, headset, it doesn't matter. And it works really, really well. It's actually using advanced machine learning that we did in terms of our internal team. We ran extensive simulations, I think over something like 500 million through the machine learning model. And it does a very, very good job. And it's also very low in terms of CPU resource utilization. It's lower than CRISP. It's lower than GeForce's similar RTX voice technology, and runs with much lower overhead. Essentially, no almost like performance penalty. So you can turn it on if you want to be able to take advantage of it. If you don't want to utilize it, you don't have to utilize it. But if you're kind of in that scenario where you want to be able to kind of reduce, things like, key typing, things like that, maybe an HVAC, dogs barking, things along those lines. It's a really nice feature to be able to take advantage of that you have with the ASUS AI noise canceling tech. And the latest version of this software is bidirectional, which means that we can apply the ASUS AI noise canceling to your microphone, and then you can also apply it to the incoming audio. So you can apply it on both sides, okay? The next item that I wanted to be able to show is going to be the TUF Gaming Audio Suite. So the TUF Gaming Audio Suite is also a little bit different and specialized. So let's go ahead and bring up this. So we partner with UPS to actually offer a specific audio suite. And you can see here that there's actually different presets along with an EQ. So you can kind of go ahead and play around with this. This is nice. This is going to be better than just the default options that Windows provides to you. You can toggle it on or off. This is one of the reasons why the TUF Gaming is the entry into our gaming series and like the Prime motherboard. It has DTS-X, which has some nice options in terms of kind of spatial sound, as well as also kind of some tweaking elements. But these are specifically tailored for gamers, where there's going to be audio presets that are available that are kind of more in line with different types of games like first-person shooters, action RPGs, kind of racing, things along those lines, along with the multi-band EQ. So you've got the TUF Gaming Audio Suite, which also includes that ASUS AI noise canceling. And the last the last package that I want to talk about here is going to be the TUF Gaming TurboLand software. So this software is going to be a software suite that is designed for packet priority software. Now, I know a lot of you sometimes don't just want to install software. You have like a perception that everything is bloatware, but we spend a lot of time to be able to try to provide software that can provide a potential benefit. Again, you don't have to install this. It's an optional installation, but it comes included with your board. What you can see right here is like I have Apex open, and I can go in and I can then set that EXE to then now become the prioritized EXE. And that means that service will now have essentially the best latency performance of any of the network-centric services that are running. So it does provide you a nice benefit. So again, I'll just kind of show you the way that works. You have a nice little stat menu that can show you that. You can actually have that overlaid on your screen. You can then go see your active devices, and you can then go ahead and set that to your prioritized device. So this is what's called the TurboLand software. And this is going to be offered on the TUF Gaming board. So that TUF Gaming board comes with this TurboLand software. It comes with the ASUS AI noise canceling software, and it also comes with that DTS audio package. So you get those kind of 3 additional pieces. So while The TUF Gaming board does have, like I said, a couple of reductions in terms of some of the key specifications, right? It still offers you a very strong foundation for kind of a gaming experience, okay? Hey, Raphael, we do actually have motherboards that do offer 10G, and we do also actually offer a 10G add-in card. So if you want to just be able to add 10G, you can buy an ASUS 10G add-in card. But we do have motherboards that do come built in with 10 gigabit built on board, okay? So let me go ahead and show you guys again quickly here the table that just shows you the difference between these two boards before we get to the ROG Strix board. So, okay, so again, here's our little bit of our comparison chart, right? So we talked initially about the Prime motherboard, and now we've got the TUF Gaming board. So again, power stages pretty much going to be similar. Both large VRM heatsinks, both have integrated IO shields, both have overclocking support. But remember, the Prime board does have the ASUS AIOC and the AI cooling technology. There's a difference in terms of SATA ports. The TUF Gaming is 4 ports. The Prime is 6 ports. Here, this is, like I said, an error on my part. The actual M.2 SSD configuration is the same. 3 M.2 SSDs and 3 M.2 SSDs. Although the TUF Gaming board does give you 3 M.2 heatsinks. Okay. The TUF Gaming board also comes with Wi-Fi 6. The USB configuration is a little bit different. The Prime board gives you a little bit more USB, 2 more USB, so a total of 9 total versus 7 total. They both have an internal Type-C header. They both have the same number of fan headers, although the Prime does have a VRM heatsink assist fan header and also a water pump header. And the Prime has a little bit of a higher audio codec with the 12220A. And the RGB headers are a little bit different. You have 2 and 2 versus 3 and 1. Okay, so that is going to be the comparison there. So now let's go ahead and get ready to get into the last deep dive board, which is going to be the ROG Strix board. So again, remember, we've got our 4 promotions that are going to be going on. The Prime Z590-A with the 11700KF. That's going to be going on today and tomorrow, and you can get this one right now for $85 off. Great promotion pricing. Next up, you'll have the TUF Gaming board, which will be on the 26th and the 27th. And then you will have the ROG Strix Z590-E, which will be on the 2nd. And then lastly, you will have the Z590 Wi-Fi Gundam Edition on the 4th. Okay, so let's get ready to go ahead and take a look at the ROG Strix board. All right. Give me a second here to grab that one here. All right. And here we can see great looking board in terms of the ROG Strix board right here. Of course, ROG Strix always has a really cool kind of styling design to it. It's almost blacked out except for that cool kind of RGB aesthetic that it has right there, which right now it's not even lit up. But it's a very, very nice looking board, right? If I kind of just slant it right, it almost looks just all blacked out, right? Except for just a little bit of that, this accent right here on the PCH, right? But we will take a look at here in a second. And this board is definitely going to have quite a bit more in terms of kind of the overall features, functions, and specifications. So this will be, let me load this one up. This will be for the ROG Strix. And we can see right here, this will be for this board. So fantastic board right here. Again, Dash-E is generally the highest end board that we offer before we get into the Maximus series. So you're really going to get a lot of premium features, functions, and specifications on this board. So let's go ahead and just get straight into some of the key differences that we're going to be offering on this board, right? So right off the bat, the big upgrade is going to be that if we take a closer look, the VRM is going to be even higher performing. But again, all of them, there are 14 plus 2, but here there's higher performing power stages, higher performing inductors. Again, it's not really that much of an issue because none of them are going to be a limiting factor in terms of being able to overclock that 11700K. But if you just kind of like having that premium performance, that's one of the benefits of going with the ROG Strix board. Now, you will have a difference in terms of right here, the memory topology. This is OptiMem 3 versus the other two boards, which are OptiMem 2. OptiMem3 is going to essentially allow us to have even better signal performance for DDR4. This can be beneficial if you want to go and kind of tune your memory and you want to have tighter timings, and you want to be able to maybe operate at lower voltage for that memory or at a higher frequency. Essentially, just because of better signaling performance, we can help to maximize however you want to tune your memory, whether it's going to be kind of for maximum efficiency or for frequency scaling. So this does feature our OptiMem3 technology. You're going to have a debug code, which is going to be an upgrade there for some users that want to have a little bit more information when maybe their system runs into an issue. It will give you an actual debug readout that you can reference, helping you to kind of know where the issue might be occurring. It still does have the debug LEDs also on this motherboard, though, so you have both that are present. You have the same 4 RGB headers, so 2 right here, and then if we all the way go down here, you have 2 here, so 3 ARGB and 1 standard RGB. Same set of fan headers, although one of the fan headers on here is going to be special because it's going to support what we call our hydronode technology. If we actually get really tight right here, you'll see that this says P, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, but the hydronode header is a specialized header that requires a microcontroller. And the cool thing about the hydronode functionality means that we can actually have multiple fans connected to one header, but they can all be individually controlled. So there's some cool functionality with that. We then go over here to that internal USB-C, and remember that right here it tells you USB 3.Gen 2x2. This is 20 gigabits. So it's rare to get a motherboard that has 20 gigabits for the internal Type-C header. So this is 20 gigabits here, your standard USB 3 here, 6 SATA ports here. Your other fan headers here. This board has 4 M.2, so 1 M.2, another M.2, and then 2 M.2 here. And I will show you actually one cool design feature that this board has that the other ones don't have, which is going to be a dual contact M.2 heatsink. So for the front and the back of the M.2 SSD. Your water pump header, your USB 2 headers, Thunderbolt, just like the other boards, and then a much higher performing audio codec implementation with the ALC 4080 and a Savitech amp that's built onto this board. When we go to the rear I/O, this one is going to have the most, where you can see 2, 4, 6, 8, right? So you have more USB here on the back, and USB 3, and USB 3 with only 2 USB 2 ports. So it has more ports than the Prime or the TUF Gaming, and more USB 3 ports. A clear CMOS button, USB BIOS flashback button, and then 2 2.5 gigabit ports along with Wi-Fi 6E. So the fastest Wi-Fi 6 that is currently available right now. And even in the included accessories, it has a new stand that we have right here for the actual antenna. It also comes included with this little guy, which is going to be a GPU kind of brace to help you to go ahead and reduce any type of car sag. You have your Q-Latch M.2 implementation right here to be able to easily install your M.2 SSDs. A cool, actually, little right here, keychain, and then also ties, right? So there's actually even some supplemental things that come included with this board. So some nice add-ons there. So we're going to go ahead and take a closer look at some of the other cool features on this board directly. But let me just see right here if we got any questions that came up right there. So Edward asks, is it worth it to upgrade from a Maximus 12 and a 10900K? So 12900K is a very, very good performing part. It's already high core count. With the Maximus board, you can also easily overclock, and you got a lot of rich features and functions. I would tell you that while there's definitely benefits, and probably the biggest one being that PCIe Gen 4 support, I don't think that there's an immediate reason. You're already not necessarily limited in terms of performance. You would be getting some nice IPC uplift and even a little bit more frequency headroom. But again, because these are going to be specifically bundled combos, all the combos that we're talking about is going to be a motherboard and CPU. I think that you have a very strong foundation to still run you actually a couple of years. So I would say, thanks for being Team ROG and Team Maximus, and best of luck with your build. But I don't think that you need to upgrade your system. So, stay with your current build, and I think you're going to be thoroughly enjoyed and kind of welcoming it. And I'd say if you're not part of our PC DIY group, make sure to join our PC DIY group. So let me go ahead and actually take a closer shot right here at this board and show you one of the cool elements here. So if we go ahead and take a closer look at this board, you'll see very similar to the other one, right? It's got the M.2 right there, but I'm going to go ahead and remove this. So go ahead and take off this M.2 heatsink. And just like the other board, right, it's a captive screw, so the screw's not going to fall away. But you'll see already the difference, right? So traditionally, with most M.2 SSDs that we've seen, they're going to only have your what's called your NAND. Your NAND is going to be on the front, but not necessarily on the back, right? So if I flip over, you'll see that there's no NAND on the back, right? But there's the NAND chips that are on the front along with the controller. But as now you get to larger capacities, right? So this is like a 2 terabyte drive, you'll find that there's actually NAND on the front and there's actually also NAND chips on the back, right? And it very much depends on the SSD. Let me go ahead and grab another one. You'll see here's another kind of M.2 SSD. And again, you can see that you have NAND here on the front and you also have NAND all on the back, right? And so the benefit of this design on the Strix is you'll see that there's actually a heat sink and there's a thermal pad for the backside. And then there's the heatsink and the thermal pad for the top. So essentially, when you install this drive, you would be able to make contact with both the front and the back. So you get better thermal dissipation performance. So that is really a really nice benefit that you're going to get by stepping over to this. And that's something that, of course, now we have on many more motherboards now in the Z690 era, but this was the first motherboard to introduce this type of feature when we implemented it on Z590. So a very cool design specification. Now, this board does also still have the Q-Latch, but the Q-Latch is going to be for the other M.2 slots. So like this slot right here will have the Q-Latch design. So if I go ahead and remove this one, you still have access to be able to quick install that SSD. But for this generation, we were not able to implement the Q-Latch for this dual heatsink design, right? So this one doesn't have the Q-Latch here, so you still install it the traditional way. While here, for installing this M.2 SSD, you could see that you could still do it the really easy way with that kind of Q-Latch design where I could just, angle that in, lock it in, and then bam, I've now installed my M.2 SSD. So very, very nice, very, very simple, very easy, right? Okay, so let me go ahead and lock this heatsink back into place here. And then I want to go ahead and show you guys one of the cool other elements, which is going to be the hydronode fan headers. So give me 1 second to just get this screw back on here. All right, so how would this work? Let me see right here. So if we take a look at fans, here we have just like kind of our standard ROG Strix. This is our XF120 fan. This is a traditional 4-pin PWM fan, right? So normally what would happen is that if you wanted to have multiple fans connected to a single header, you would use what we talked about earlier, which would be something like this, right? This is a PWM fan splitter cable. So again, if we go back to our motherboard here, go ahead and focus there, guys. Sorry about that. Okay, so if we go right here to our motherboard and let's say we had a fan header. So this is a fan header that's right there. We would take something like the splitter and you can see right here, then you've got now 3 outputs, right? So you would have essentially more outputs and you could connect, multiple fans to one header, right? So that's great because then you could take, 3 fans and run those all from one header, right? You'd be good to go. But the disadvantage of this, and it's not necessarily a disadvantage, is going to be that all those fans, when they're connected to that header, are going to be grouped. So that means that all 3 of them are going to work together, right? But what we did and develop on this board is this board has something that's called a hydronode fan header. It does require specific fans. An example of this would be there are fans from BitPhoenix. This one's from Silverstone. But these fans actually have a specialized controller and IC that works with the controller and IC that we have on the board, that when you actually connect the cables all together, you would then be able to uniquely control each one of the fans. So the motherboard will actually see each one of the 3 fans that are connected to that one header, and you could have 8 fan curves. So it's quite a bit more advanced. It's also an intelligent connection, which means that we can sense actually the operating parameters of the fan, like how long the fan's been running, for like life cycle monitoring and additional information. So it's actually a really cool level of functionality and feature that you have available to you with the Hydra node design. But again, that's exclusive. That's only on the ROG Strix board. That is not going to be on the TUF Gaming motherboard, and it's not going to be on the Prime series motherboard. Okay. And you can know the Hydra node header by checking for the P designation on the actual fan header. All right. So this board also does have the ASUS AI cooling technology, and it also has the ASUS AI OC technology. So both of those are going to be present on this. And as a recap on all of these, right, pretty much all of you are very much available. Excuse me. Well, you should probably be already aware. But in terms of RGB lighting, of course, all of our boards are going to support our ASUS Aura Sync feature, right? And that means that you can control your RGB lighting for a wide range of devices, not only from ASUS, but from partners, all through our Armoury Crate software. So you can see right here, this is like a unified setup where we've got, the motherboard, we've got the graphics card, peripherals all in there, and everything can be controlled in sync. We have multiple lighting profiles, all that cool stuff. I also really like a cool feature that sometimes people don't even realize that we have, which is going to be what's called scenario profiles, which means that you can have your RGB lighting assigned to different applications. So you could have RGB lighting set for opening up to your browser, and then you could have it also different to when you open up like Microsoft Word, to different to when you actually open up, Fortnite or The Witcher 3 or some game that you're playing. So that's a really kind of cool level of functionality. And for more advanced ARGB lighting, we also have our ASUS Aura Creator application. So that will allow you to have even more advanced kind of per LED control if you want to create really cool customized like RGB color schemes and profiles and things along those lines. All right, so that gives you kind of a range of different elements there on this ROG Strix board. And let me go ahead and just give you guys the quick recap right here in terms, again, of the differences for this board. So when we take a look right here at the Dash E has the Optimum M3 versus Optimum M2, higher performing VRM components, along with the heatsink on this model. So again, let me see if I show you right here. This model's heatsink right here. This is a much larger heatsink. It's not just this part, and it's not just this part. This entire portion right here is also part of the heatsink. So there's a full aluminum extended block that goes from this portion to here. So a much larger surface area. And this model also has an integrated heat pipe. So there's a heat pipe that runs right here through here. So there's an L pipe. So there's a lot of thermal dissipation performance. If I actually kind of tilt it up, let me see if you might be able to see it. We'll have to kind of see if we can get it focused. You see if we can get it, but you can see right there, that little kind of part right there, that is the heat pipe is right there. Okay. So if we head back over here, we've got that heat pipe. There's going to be the, of course, PCIe Gen 4 support for the graphics card and the M.2, Thunderbolt header, onboard graphics card support, 6 SATA ports. This one has 4 M.2, whereas the Prime and the TUF Gaming have only 3 M.2. And of course, all the slots have heat sinks, and this one also comes with that dual-sided heatsink design that we talked about. So it makes contact with both sides of the M.2 SSD, Wi-Fi 6E, dual 2.5 gigabit LAN, USB 3.0 Gen 2, so 20 gigabits on the back and 20 gigabits at the front, with a total of 10 ports and 8 being USB 3. So the best USB configuration, has the most fan headers along with the Hydra node header and the highest performing audio codec design with Sonic Studio 3 and DTS sound outbound, and then also 3 RGB headers and 1 RGB. This board also does come included with the MEM test functionality inside of the UEFI BIOS, which is really cool. So you can easily be able to go ahead and test your memory. That's a really cool level of functionality as well on this board. So that is going to be pretty much all of the boards that we've got, again, on promotion. So let me recap those, and I'm going to lastly show you the Gundam board, which, like I said, is pretty much going to be the same as the TUF Gaming motherboard, just with a different design. So to recap again, right now, you can get the Prime Z590-A with the Core i7 11700KF, today and tomorrow, about $85 off right now at Amazon. I've gone ahead and linked it into the chat. We will then have coming up the TUF Gaming Z590 Plus Wi-Fi with the 11700KF, which will be on the 26th and the 27th. Then the Strix board, which I just talked about, which will be on the 2nd and only the 2nd. And then lastly, the Gundam Wi-Fi edition board with the 11700K on the 4th. So those will be your 4 bundled pairs. And like I said, overall, all the way around, all of them are going to be around about an $85 promotion. Actually, the Strix board shows it actually should be a $95 off of MSRP. And for the Gundam board, it'll be $93 off of MSRP. So some very nice savings there. So let me lastly go ahead and bring up this Gundam board here, so you guys can take a look at this beautiful board. One of my favorite looking motherboards. Of course, this was with the awesome collaborative IP that we completed in terms of the Gundam IP, where we had a wide range of items that featured the Gundam design. And so if you want something that looks a little bit different and still offers you a great set of features, functions, specifications, this is pretty much the TUF Gaming motherboard, but just rebranded with a different ID design. This is going to be another great option for you. So 4 different motherboards that allow you to jump into taking advantage of that 11th gen Rocket Lake architecture, great performance for 1080p and 1440p, right? Great overclocking features and functionality, strong DDR4 memory controller support, PCIe Gen 4 support, right? Updated DMI link, optional Thunderbolt 4 support, as well as your USB 3. Gen 2 support by 2. And then, of course, all that rich USB connectivity and all those other kind of features that we've talked about at the very beginning of the stream from kind of the chipset and CPU platform side. So that covers pretty much everything that we had here. I know some last people wanted to go ahead and just get a little bit of sense of how the actual ASUS UEFI looks in the UEFI environment. So I'm going to use quickly here. This is a Z690 platform, but the overall kind of ASUS AIOC functionality will look very, very similar to this. So I'm just going to go ahead and use this as a reference so that for those of you that kind of actually just want to see the way that it would work, then you'll happily have a better understanding of it. Hey, Ferenic, thanks for joining us here on the stream. We're getting ready to kind of wrap it up here. We've got a cool demo here of our ASUS AIOC technology, which is featured on the ASUS AIOC enabled boards like the Prime series and the ROG Strix series. This has been for actually 4 motherboards that we have right now at promotion on Amazon. So let me go ahead and show you guys this. I think I've got this system up and running. So let me see here. I'm going to have to probably tweak my keyboard here and see if I can get this set up here. Okay, so let's see here. All right, looks like you guys hopefully can see my desktop right there. And this is going to apply, I guess, right now. I'll just put it back on the Prime because the Prime right now is the board that's available, right? And we're going to head over into the UEFI environment. And do keep in mind that if you do want to enable the ASUS AIOC technology, you can go ahead and do this within the Armoury Crate software. So you don't actually have to enable it through the UEFI. You can actually just install the Armoury Crate software and turn it on, and it will enable the ASUS AIOC feature. If you want to be able to customize it, though, and have essentially access to things like a temperature cap or a voltage cap or kind of other elements, then you would need to go ahead and do that. Oh, forgot to hit the delete there. So I'll need to go ahead and reboot there in a moment so that I can go ahead and get into it there. Although I could also use the command function option, which is a little bit easier for rebooting into the UEFI. And let me just see here if we got any questions before we get ready to jump into that. Yeah, let me go ahead and get you the link on the Strix. Sure. 1 second here. Reboot into our UEFI right there. And let me get you the links right here. And keep in mind that the Strix will not be live until that start date that we talked about, right? Okay, this is the link right here for the Strix. And I will also drop the link there in for the Gundam edition. So we've gone ahead and entered into the UEFI right here. So now that we've gone ahead and entered into the UEFI, it's a very simple process. You'll actually see right here at the top, there's a little guide right here. It says ASUS AIOC. It actually would take you through all the different kind of explanation of understanding the way everything's working. And then you could just go ahead and enable that function, right? Now, I already have it enabled. So what we can actually do is we can actually head over to ASUS AIOC. And you can actually see the way that it works. So right here under AI features, if I go ahead and maybe adjust this a little bit so you can actually see right here. Down here, you'll see that there's actually the cooler score. And then it actually tells us what we actually are targeting in terms of our overclock, in terms of the maximum overclock, the corresponding voltage, and the load line calibration. Now, some people kind of get worried like, oh, isn't it too much voltage? It's very important to keep in mind that we use what's called a static voltage and an adaptive voltage. So depending actually, excuse me, an adaptive voltage versus a static voltage, right? So this means that the actual voltage is only incrementally on top of what actually the voltage is that the CPU is already asking for. In terms of its actually target frequency, and it also comes up and goes down dynamically under load. So if I were to go back into Windows, you'll actually see that if I opened up my CPU-Z or some monitoring utility, the CPU will still go down to like 800 megahertz with a low voltage and then only go up to the higher voltage and frequency. And then again, that's dependent on the actual CPU load, right? That's occurring, right? But here you can see that the overclock that it was able to achieve was 5.4 gigahertz on 3 cores, then 5.2 gigahertz on 5 cores, and then 5.1 gigahertz on all cores. And then you'll see that it's using an adaptive voltage, right? And that's set across all of that. Now, this is a little bit different because this is a 12th gen series, but this is fundamentally the same type of functionality that is present. And the cool things that you can do right here, if you want to kind of tweak it further, one, you could pick a package threshold. So temperature, so if you wanted to have a limit that you would limit the overclocking based on a temperature threshold, then you could do that. You could also go ahead and stop the training. The reason why you would want to stop the training is maybe if you don't want your overclock to adjust based on temperature. So the advantage of having this option is, let's say, like I said earlier, if your system or your overall environment gets hotter, your cooler performance could go down. So actually will bring down your overclock. We'll automatically dynamically adjust the overclock. Same thing if your cooling performance got better. Let's say you upgraded to a cooler and it notices that you have a better cooling performance, it actually will improve your overclocking headroom. You'll also see here that there's an option here to adjust kind of how much we're sampling that information. And then lastly, even an optimism scale. So the optimism scale is a cool thing that if you want it to be a little bit less aggressive, or you want it to be a little bit more aggressive, you can go ahead and adjust that by just adjusting the scale. So you could go to like 90 if you wanted to be a little bit more conservative, or if you wanted to be actually a little bit more aggressive, you could actually go ahead and increase this beyond 100. And do keep in mind that you could even further go in and make adjustments to the voltage or to the VF curve or to other parameters and still have this adjustment table automatically make an adjustment for you. So this is quite a bit of a big overclock that it's already gone ahead and done for us automatically. We didn't need to do anything except initially run a load on our system. So it makes the experience quite a bit easier, quite a bit nicer in terms of being able to get more out of your 11th gen 11700K and then your ASUS AIOC enabled motherboard. Now, if you got the Prime motherboard, excuse me, if you got the TUF Gaming motherboard or the Gundam motherboard, you can still manually overclock the system. You can still take advantage of our UEFI BIOS. You can still use XTU. You just don't have that ASUS AIOC technology. That's exclusive on the Prime board and the ROG Strix board. All right. So that wraps up our stream. Hopefully you guys are going to take advantage of these really awesome promotions. It was very cool to be able to go ahead and touch on these guys and be able to give you guys some very cool promo packages that we've got going on. Again, today and tomorrow for the Prime board, right? Then next up, the TUF Gaming board on the 26th and the 27th. Then next up, the ROG Strix, which is going to be on the 2nd. And then lastly, the Gundam Edition board, which will be on the 4th. All right, guys. So with that, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your day, stay safe and stay healthy. Anybody that's watching the stream, we will go ahead and put the links in the description just as a fallback, but do keep in mind that these promos are going to be price sensitive. And if you haven't, make sure to go ahead and join us in our ASUS PCDIY Facebook group, which is also linked in the description if you want to find out more about tips, tricks, insights, or anything related to any one of these ASUS-based motherboards. Take care, take it easy, and enjoy the rest of your day.